Johnny Carson stood silent for 11 seconds on live television, tears streaming down his face, then said, "I have to go," and abandoned The Tonight Show in front of 43 million people. What was written on that yellow piece of paper was so devastating that the most professional man on television forgot he was on television at all. March 17th, 1979. Studio One in Burbank, California. St. Patrick's Day. Everything had been perfect until now. The audience was hot, really hot. The kind of crowd that laughs before you finish the joke. Johnny was wearing his signature tan suit. Ed McMahon was at his desk doing that laugh. The one that made you feel like you were in on the greatest inside joke in America. Doc Severinsen and the band had just nailed the outro to a bit about President Carter's latest speech. The ratings had hit an all-time high. 43 million people were watching. The Tonight Show wasn't just a talk show anymore. It was a ritual. The place America went to. Forget about gas lines and inflation, and everything else that made 1979 feel like the country was holding its breath. Johnny was telling a joke about his third divorce, self-deprecating the way only Johnny could make it charming instead of sad. The audience was howling. Then he saw movement in his peripheral vision. Stage left. Near the curtain where guests waited, a stagehand was walking toward him. Not hurrying, not running, just walking with purpose across that famous Tonight Show stage, while the cameras were rolling and Johnny was mid-sentence. This never happened. Ever. The man was older, maybe 60, wearing the standard crew black. But his hands were shaking. Johnny could see that from 15 feet away, and his face had that look people get when they're about to deliver news that can't wait, news that doesn't care about timing or propriety or the fact that you're on live television. Johnny stopped talking. Just stopped. Mid-joke. The audience thought it was a bit at first, started to laugh, then realized Johnny wasn't playing. He was staring at this stagehand, who was now standing right next to him, holding out a piece of yellow legal paper folded in half. The studio went quiet, not television quiet, actually quiet. You could hear the hum of the stage lights. Johnny took the paper. He tried to make a joke, something about getting his grocery list mid-show, but it came out wrong, hollow, because he saw the stagehand's eyes up close now. The man looked terrified and apologetic all at once. Johnny unfolded the corner of the paper, just enough to see the first line of handwriting. His smile, that perfect Carson smile that had made him the king of late night, faltered. Just for a second. But the cameras caught it. 43 million people saw Johnny Carson's face do something it never did. It showed fear. Fred de Cordova, the show's executive producer, was already signaling from the control booth. Cut to commercial. Now. Johnny looked at the yellow paper in his hand, then at the audience, then back at the paper. He didn't say a word. The screen went black. Johnny unfolded the yellow paper during the commercial break, expecting a fan letter or maybe a joke setup. Instead, he saw a name he hadn't read in 36 years. Margaret Sullivan, Norfolk, Nebraska. The girl he'd left behind in 1943. The handwriting was shaky, but Johnny recognized it immediately. That careful cursive, the way Margaret made her capital S with that little flourish at the top. He'd gotten letters in that handwriting once, a long time ago. Before he stopped writing back. The note was short, direct, devastating. "Johnny, it's Margaret Sullivan. I'm at Burbank Hospice on Olive Avenue. I have 48 hours left, maybe less. There's something I never told you. Something I should have told you years ago. I need you to know the truth before I go. I need you to meet someone. Room 304. Please come. Please. M." Johnny read it once, then again, then a third time. "Something I never told you." His hands started shaking. The paper trembled so much the words blurred together. Fred de Cordova appeared next to him. "Johnny, you okay? We've got 90 seconds. Johnny couldn't speak. He just handed Fred the note. Fred read it, his face going from concern to pale. "Oh my God. Is this real?" Johnny's voice came out hoarse. "Is this some kind of..." The stagehand said a woman called the network 4 times today, said it was urgent, said it was about Norfolk, Nebraska. We thought she was a fan. Someone finally took the message seriously about 20 minutes ago. Norfolk, Nebraska. Suddenly, Johnny was 17 again, standing on the platform at the Norfolk train station in August 1943. Margaret cried. Him in his Navy uniform, feeling like a hero and a coward all at once. Promising to write, promising to come back. He'd written for a while. 3 months, maybe 4. Then he discovered radio, discovered he could make people laugh, discovered there was a whole world bigger than Norfolk, Nebraska, and somewhere in all that discovering, he'd stopped writing. Margaret Sullivan. Something I never told you. What could Margaret possibly need to tell him after all this time? Johnny. Fred's hand was on his shoulder. 60 seconds. What do you want to do? Ed McMahon was watching from his desk. Even from across the stage, Johnny could see the concern on Ed's face. 30 seconds, Johnny. The audience was waiting. Burt Reynolds was waiting in the wings. 43 million people were waiting for Johnny Carson to come back from commercials and make them laugh. But Johnny couldn't stop staring at that piece of yellow paper, at the name Margaret Sullivan, at the words "something I never told you," at a truth he'd been running from without even knowing it. The cameras came back on. Johnny stood at his mark behind the desk, the yellow paper still in his hand. He looked at the audience, 430 people waiting for him to make them laugh. And for the first time in 6,241 episodes, Johnny Carson had no idea what to say. The audience was smiling, ready. They wanted the monologue to continue. They wanted Burt Reynolds. They wanted what they always got from The Tonight Show, magic. But Johnny just stood there. 1 second. He was still holding the note, not even trying to hide it, just holding it in his right hand, staring at it. 2 seconds. The audience started to shift. A few nervous laughs. Was this a bit? Was Johnny doing something experimental? 3 seconds. Ed McMahon leaned forward at his desk. You could see the concern on his face now. Ed knew when something was wrong. 4 seconds. In the control booth, Fred de Cordova was gripping the edge of the console. The director was looking at Fred, waiting for instructions. 5 seconds. The audience wasn't laughing anymore. A woman in the third row leaned over and whispered something to her husband. The camera operators were exchanging glances. 6 seconds. Johnny, Ed's voice barely audible, off camera, gentle. 7 seconds. Johnny's face did something it never did on television. The mask cracked. That legendary Carson cool just fractured right there in front of 15 million people. 8 seconds. His eyes filled with tears. Not dramatically, just real tears forming because Johnny Carson was holding a piece of yellow paper that said someone from his past needed him and was running out of time. 9 seconds. The studio was completely silent now. Actually silent. The kind of silence that happens when 430 people collectively realize they're witnessing something they were never supposed to see. 10 seconds. A child in the audience whispered, "Mommy, why isn't the man talking?" The mother shushed her, but the question hung in the air. 11 seconds. Johnny looked up. Not in the audience, not at Ed, at Fred, standing in the wings. And Fred saw it, saw what Johnny was about to do. 12 seconds. Someone in the back coughed. A woman in the front row pulled her purse closer. This wasn't entertainment anymore. 13 seconds. The camera operator's hand trembled slightly. Doc Severinsen leaned forward, watching Johnny like everyone else. 14 seconds. Johnny's breathing was visible now. Shallow, quick. 15 seconds. Folks, Johnny's voice cracked, broke on that single word. He tried again. Folks, I need to. He couldn't finish. Just stood there behind that famous desk where he'd made America laugh for 17 years. And he couldn't finish a sentence. Johnny looked at Fred. 2 words. Clear and direct and absolutely final. I have to go. The audience gasped. Because Johnny Carson didn't leave. Johnny Carson didn't walk away mid-show. Johnny Carson was the show. But Johnny was already removing his microphone. His hands were steady now. The shaking had stopped. He'd made the decision, and there was a strange kind of calm that came with it. He set the microphone on the desk, right next to the coffee mug with his name on it. He picked up the yellow paper, folded it carefully, and put it in his jacket pocket. Then Johnny Carson walked toward the stage exit, leaving The Tonight Show for the first time in 17 years without saying goodnight. If you want to know what Johnny found in room 304, hit that subscribe button right now. This story is about to break your heart in the most beautiful way. Don't miss what happens next. Ed McMahon stood up from his desk. Johnny handed him the yellow paper as he passed. Ed read it once, looked at Johnny's face, and nodded. He understood. Ed had been there for every divorce, every bad night, every moment when Johnny's personal life tried to crack through that professional veneer. Burt Reynolds was standing in the wings, confused. He'd flown in from Florida for this. But Johnny walked right past him, heading for his dressing room without breaking stride. The audience sat in stunned silence. Then the murmurs started. "What's happening? Is he okay?" Fred de Cordova rushed onto the stage, forced a smile. "Folks, we've had a bit of an emergency." Johnny had to step away. "We're going to take a brief break," but Fred knew. They weren't coming back. Not tonight. In his dressing room, Johnny was already changing out of his suit, hands shaking so badly he couldn't work the buttons. His assistant had to help him. Fred appeared in the doorway. "Johnny, we can tape this tomorrow. Take all the time you need." Johnny pulled on his jacket. "Fred, someone from my past is running out of time 3 miles from here. Someone who says she has something to tell me. I know." I read the note. Margaret Sullivan, Norfolk, Nebraska. I haven't thought about that name in decades. Fred nodded. "Your car's already waiting. The ride to Burbank Hospice should have taken 15 minutes, but Johnny's driver made it in 8. Frank had seen the look on his face. Whatever this was, it couldn't wait. Johnny sat in the back seat, staring at that yellow piece of paper. "Something I never told you. I need you to meet someone." "Meet someone? Who?" The pieces started clicking together. August 1943. The last time he'd seen Margaret, if she'd been pregnant when he left. No. She would have told him. She would have, but she hadn't. He'd stopped writing first. What if Margaret had tried to reach him, and he'd been too busy, too ambitious to notice? "We're here, Mr. Carson." The car stopped in front of Burbank Hospice. 11:47 at night. The building was quiet. Visiting hours were long over. Johnny got out. His legs felt unsteady. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed. Everything was beige and cream. A nurse at the front desk looked up, recognized him immediately. Her eyes went wide. "I need room 304, Johnny said. The nurse glanced at the clock. "Sir, visiting hours ended at 9. "I can't." "Please." Johnny leaned on the desk. "Her name is Margaret Sullivan. She asked me to come. She said she doesn't have much time." The nurse studied his face. "I saw something there. 3rd floor. Take the elevator on your right." "But Mr. Carson? The patient in 304. She's fading fast." "Don't wait." Johnny rode the elevator alone. I watched the numbers light up. 1, 2, 3. The doors opened. Room 304 was at the end, door slightly ajar. Johnny could hear voices inside. One older, weak. One younger, reading aloud. He stood outside that door for 30 seconds, maybe longer. Hand raised to knock, trying to find the courage to change his life forever. Finally, he knocked. Once. Softly. The younger voice stopped reading. "Come in." Johnny pushed the door open and saw her. A woman in her 30s, auburn hair, sitting beside the bed. She had his eyes. Johnny stood frozen in the doorway. Those eyes, that same gray blue that looked almost silver in a certain light. Johnny had looked at his own eyes in the mirror for 53 years, and here they were, looking back at him from a stranger's face. The woman was 35, maybe 36. Auburn hair pulled back, wearing a cardigan. She was sitting in a chair next to the hospital bed, holding someone's hand. Margaret's hand. Johnny's breath caught. She was so small, so fragile. The girl he'd left at the Norfolk train station had weighed maybe 115 pounds. This woman couldn't weigh more than 90. Her hair, once dark and thick, was thin now, gray, spread across the pillow like spider silk. An oxygen tube ran under her nose, but her eyes. When they found Johnny standing in the doorway, they lit up. "Johnny." Her voice was barely a whisper, but it was her voice. Johnny couldn't move, just stood there like someone had nailed his feet to the floor. The younger woman stood up, slowly. She stepped between Johnny and her mother. Her mother? Not aggressively, just instinctively. "You came." Her voice was steady but cautious. "I didn't think you'd come. I'm Catherine." Catherine. the someone Margaret needed him to meet. And you just left? In the middle of your show? Johnny found his voice. I got the note. Catherine studied him. Those eyes, his eyes, searching his face. Then she stepped aside. Johnny moved toward the bed. Each step felt impossible. He stopped at the edge, looking down at Margaret. He knelt down, eye level with her now. Margaret. His voice cracked. I got your note. Margaret smiled. Weak, but genuine. I didn't think you'd come. I thought maybe you'd forgotten Norfolk. I never forgot you. I didn't know how to go back. Margaret's hand moved slightly on the bedsheet. An invitation. Johnny took it. Her skin was cool, fragile. Your note said you had something to tell me. Yes. Margaret's eyes moved to Catherine. Johnny, this is Catherine. She's our daughter. The words hit Johnny like a physical blow. Our daughter. Johnny looked at Catherine. Really looked at her. The eyes. The shape of her face. I am 35 years old. Born in 1944. 9 months after he'd left Norfolk. You have a daughter. Margaret's voice was getting weaker. You've always had a daughter. I never told you. Johnny stood up slowly, faced Catherine. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know. Catherine's jaw tightened. Her eyes filled with tears. She was clearly fighting. She never told you because she loved you too much to make you choose. Johnny looked at Margaret, and suddenly he was 17 again, standing on that train platform in Norfolk, Nebraska. Norfolk, 1943. Johnny Carson was 17, working at his father's electrical company for 42 cents an hour, completely in love with Margaret Sullivan, the girl who worked at the drugstore counter on Main Street. This was before Hollywood, before fame, before anyone knew the name Johnny Carson. Margaret was 16, dark hair she wore pinned back, bright eyes that lit up when Johnny walked into Benson's drugstore. She wanted to be a teacher. They'd been together for 2 years. Met at a church social when Johnny cracked a joke and Margaret laughed so hard she snorted. Johnny fell for her right then, because she laughed like she meant it. They talked about marriage the way 17-year-olds do, with absolute certainty and no real plan. They'd stay in Norfolk. Everything would be simple and perfect. Then Pearl Harbor happened. Johnny signed up for the Navy in June 1943. Told Margaret over ice cream sodas. She cried. You'll come back, she said. I'll come back, Johnny promised. August 19th, 1943. The Norfolk train station. Margaret wearing the yellow dress. Johnny in his Navy uniform. Write to me, Margaret said. Every day, Johnny promised. And come back to me. I'll come back, I promise. Margaret kissed him. Long and desperate. The train whistle blew. Johnny got on board. Looked back at Margaret standing on that platform, crying. He waved. She waved back. The train pulled away. Johnny watched Norfolk disappear. He discovered something on that train ride west. Discovered radio, bigger stages, ambition that didn't fit in a small town. The letters came at first, every week. Then they slowed. Once a month, once every 2 months. Then they stopped altogether. Johnny had found success in California, a future that didn't include going back. Margaret never heard from him again. But 6 weeks after that train pulled away, Margaret discovered something that would change both their lives forever. She was expecting. She made a choice right then. She wouldn't tell him, wouldn't trap him, wouldn't be the girl from Nebraska who ruined Johnny Carson's future. She'd carry the secret alone. Johnny came back to the present, back to room 304, back to Margaret and Catherine, his daughter. The baby Margaret had carried alone because she loved him too much to hold him back. Why? Johnny's voice broke. Why didn't you tell me? Margaret's eyes moved between Johnny and Catherine. Because I watched you leave on that train and I knew you were going to do big things. And 6 weeks later, when I realized I was carrying your child, I had a choice. Tell you and watch you come back out of obligation. Watch you resent me, or let you go. Let you become who you were meant to be. April 1944. Catherine Marie Sullivan was born at Norfolk General Hospital. 7 pounds, 3 ounces. Perfect, except for the scandal she represented in small-town Nebraska. Margaret's parents were ashamed. Good Catholic family, their daughter pregnant out of wedlock. They helped, but the disappointment never quite left their eyes. Margaret worked at the drugstore during the day. Then at night, She'd waitress until 2 in the morning. The town talked. Poor Margaret Sullivan. Such a shame. But Margaret held her head high, worked her shifts, raised her daughter, and watched Johnny on television. Catherine grew up smart, funny, and kind. Became a teacher, just like Margaret had wanted to be. Married a good man named Robert. I had 2 children. Never knew the truth about the grandfather they'd never met, until 3 days ago. Margaret had been sick for 6 months. The doctors sent her home. Make her comfortable. There's nothing more we can do. On March 14th, Margaret woke up with absolute clarity. Catherine, she said, I need to tell you something. Your father is Johnny Carson. Catherine stared at her mother, waiting for confusion. But Margaret's eyes were clear. The man on television, that's him. He doesn't know. I never told him. Mama, why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want you to wonder why he chose fame over you. He didn't choose. He never knew there was a choice to make. Margaret reached for her daughter's hand. I need you to find him. I need him to know the truth before I go. He has a daughter, and she's wonderful, and he deserves to know that something beautiful came from what we had. 3 days of phone calls, until finally, someone listened. Margaret had used her last savings to fly to Burbank, to a hospice 3 miles from where Johnny told his jokes. Room 304, hoping he'd remember, hoping he'd come. And he had. Catherine handed Johnny a photograph, edges worn from handling. It was him at 17, in his Navy uniform, arm around Margaret at the Norfolk train station. She carried this in her wallet, Catherine said. Every single day since you left. Johnny took the photograph with shaking hands, that boy with the cocky smile. And Margaret, 17, tried to smile, but you could see she'd been crying. August 19th, 1943. She kept this? In her wallet, right next to my school pictures, right next to pictures of her grandchildren you've never met. Catherine sat back down. I'm a teacher, 2nd grade, just like she wanted to be before she had me. I grew up in Norfolk, Catherine continued. Married a man named Robert. We have 2 kids. Michael's 10, Sarah's 8. They're back in Nebraska. They don't know who you are. Grandchildren. He had grandchildren. Mom and I watched you together, Catherine said. Every night. You were the only thing she had of you, and she shared it with me. I watched you my whole life. Watch you be funny and charming and famous. Her voice caught. And the whole time I was watching my father, a father who didn't know I existed. Catherine, Margaret's voice, weak but firm. That's not fair. It's true, though. You made millions of strangers laugh, but you weren't there for your own daughter. Do you understand what that feels like? Johnny knelt down again. You're right. None of this is fair, and I can't change 36 years. But you're wrong about one thing. I didn't choose fame over you. I didn't know there was a choice. I didn't want to trap you. Margaret's words came slowly. You were going to do big things. I wasn't going to be the girl who ruined it all. You should have told me. Johnny's voice broke. I would have come back. No, Johnny. Margaret's grip tightened. You wouldn't have, and that's okay. You became exactly who you were meant to be. You made millions laugh. That matters. But I missed everything. Catherine growing up. 36 years. You didn't miss it completely, Margaret said. She watched you. You were there. Just in a different way. Catherine pulled more photographs from her purse. This is Michael. This is Sarah, your grandchildren. Johnny looked at the photos. A boy with a gap-toothed smile. A girl with pigtails in his eyes. They don't know who I am. No. Do you want them to? Catherine was quiet for a long moment. Mom never let me be angry at you. She'd tell me stories about the funny boy from Norfolk. About someone who had important things to do. Catherine's voice caught. She loved you. Even after all these years. How can I hate someone she loved that much? Margaret smiled. I don't need an apology. I just needed you to know the truth. And I needed Catherine to meet you before I go. Do you hate me? Johnny asked Catherine. I hated the idea of you. But you didn't leave us. You didn't know we existed. She paused. If you had known, would you have come back? Johnny was quiet, honest. I don't know. I was 17 and ambitious. So I honestly don't know. Thank you for being honest. But I'm here now. and I want to know you, if you'll let me. Catherine looked at her mother. Margaret nodded. Okay, Catherine said softly. I'd like that. Have you ever had to choose between your career and the people you love? Or felt left behind by someone chasing their dreams? Drop a comment and share your story. Sometimes we all need to be reminded that it's never too late to show up. Johnny Carson stayed in room 304 for 11 hours. He held Margaret's hand, told Catherine stories about grandparents she'd never met, and for the first time in 36 years, he wasn't the king of late night. He was just Johnny from Norfolk. The nurses came in to check vitals. They recognized Johnny immediately, but were professional. They did their jobs quietly and left the family alone. Family. That's what they'd become. Strangers connected by blood and secrets and years of missing each other. Johnny told stories about his childhood, about his parents, Catherine's grandparents, his dad, the electrical company manager, his mom, who'd encouraged his dreams. Your grandmother had this laugh, Johnny said. This loud, wonderful laugh. That's what I've been chasing my whole career. Making people laugh like that. Catherine listened, learning about a history she'd never known. Grandparents who'd passed away years ago. Margaret drifted in and out. Sometimes she'd wake up, see Johnny, and smile. Sometimes she'd be confused. Then her eyes would find Johnny and Catherine, and she'd remember. She'd relax. At 2 a.m, Margaret woke up suddenly. Her eyes were unfocused. When do you ship out? She asked, voice stronger than it had been in hours. Johnny understood. She thought it was 1943 again. Not for a while yet, he said gently. We've got time. Good. Margaret smiled. I want to remember everything about tonight. Me too, Margaret. She drifted off again. At 3:15, a nurse brought coffee. She lingered in the doorway. Mr. Carson? My mother watched you every night. She passed 2 years ago, but she loved you. Said you got her through some hard times. What was her name? Johnny asked. Dorothy Michaels. Tell me about her. And Johnny sat there and listened to a nurse tell him about her mother for 10 minutes. Really listened. When she left, she was crying, but smiling. Catherine watched this, watched her father make a stranger feel seen while his own world was falling apart. At 4 a.m, Margaret was lucid again. Tell me, she said. Tell me about your life, the real one, Johnny told her. About his 3 marriages, each one ending in divorce. About how he'd never been able to let anyone in. About the walls he'd built. I've been successful by every measure that matters to Hollywood, Johnny said, but I've been failing at everything that actually matters. I don't know how to be a husband. I don't know how to be a father. Margaret's hand squeezed his. You were always looking for somewhere bigger than Norfolk. You were always enough. Johnny's voice broke. I was just too stupid and ambitious to see it, and you made millions happy. Don't discount that. Catherine had been silent. Now she spoke. You gave us something to share, something that made hard days easier. Mom and I laughed because of you. She hesitated. Dad. The word hung in the air. Dad. Johnny looked at her. Tears streamed down his face. You can call me Dad? I'd like to try. At 5 a.m, Catherine stepped out to call her husband. Johnny was alone with Margaret. Johnny, Margaret whispered. There's something else. In my bag. Letters. Letters? Letters I wrote to you. Every year on your birthday. Never sent them. They're for you. Johnny found the bag. Inside was a bundle of envelopes. Dozens of them. Years of letters. All addressed to him. Never mailed. I wrote to you every year, Margaret said. Told you about Catherine. About how proud I was. I never sent them because I didn't want to burden you. But I want you to have them now. Johnny held the letters. Overwhelmed. Margaret, It's okay, Johnny. You're here now. That's what matters. Margaret was crying too. Take care of her. Be the father you would have been if you'd known. It's not too late. 6:14 in the morning. The sun was starting to come up. Margaret's breathing had been getting shallower. Slower. Margaret opened her eyes one last time. I looked at Johnny, then at Catherine, smiled. Thank you, she whispered. Both of you, for being here, for being family. Her eyes closed. Her breathing stopped. Peaceful, holding both their hands. She was gone, Johnny and Catherine sat there in silence for 20 minutes, maybe longer. They just sat there, holding the hands of the woman who'd connected them, who'd loved them both enough to carry a secret and finally set it free. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to remember that the people who love us enough to set us free are the ones worth coming back for. Pass this along to a parent, a child, or anyone who needs to know it's never too late to be family. Johnny Carson returned to The Tonight Show 3 days later. He never explained where he went on March 17th, 1979, but everyone who knew Johnny said he came back different. The show went on. The ratings stayed strong. America kept laughing. But something had shifted in Johnny. He started calling Catherine every Sunday. They'd talk for an hour, sometimes longer, about her teaching, about Michael and Sarah, about Margaret, about Norfolk, about all the years they'd missed. 3 months later, Johnny flew to Nebraska quietly. Just Johnny Carson showing up at Catherine's house, meeting his grandchildren for the first time, sitting in the bleachers at Michael's Little League game, wearing a Dodgers cap and sunglasses. Michael hit a double that day. Johnny stood up and cheered, and Sarah said, "You're really loud, Grandpa." Johnny laughed. That real laugh. Your grandmother always said the same thing. He set up a trust fund, enough for Catherine to never worry, enough for college education. He did it quietly, no press releases. Every March 17th, Johnny would fly to Norfolk, visit Margaret's grave. He'd sit there for an hour, talking to her, telling her about Catherine, about the grandkids, about how she'd been right all along. Ed McMahon noticed the change. After that night, Ed said, years later, Johnny stopped pretending to be invincible. He let himself be human, but there was something softer in him, something real. Johnny wore a pocket watch after that night. Every episode, Margaret's father's watch, given to Johnny that last night. "So you remember," she'd said. "So you remember that time is the only thing we can't get back." May 22nd, 1992, Johnny's final episode. The audience was packed with celebrities, network executives, but in the third row, sitting quietly, were Catherine, Michael, and Sarah. Johnny saw them during his final monologue, touched his vest pocket where the watch rested, nodded slightly. After the show, Johnny went to the third row. "Thank you for being here," he told Catherine. "Thank you for showing up," she said back. January 23rd, 2005. Johnny passed away at age 79. In his desk at home, Catherine found a letter, written in Margaret's handwriting, dated March 18th, 1979. Margaret had written it before he arrived. "Johnny, thank you for giving me the most important thing in my life. Catherine, I never regretted loving you. I never regretted letting you go, and I never stopped being proud of you. You made millions laugh, but you made me believe in goodness. That's worth more than anything. Love always, Margaret." Catherine gave one interview. Just one. Showed the photograph of Johnny and Margaret at the Norfolk train station. Showed her mother's wallet, still containing that worn picture. "My father taught me that it's never too late to show up. Some moments are more important than any audience." See, here's what March 17th, 1979 really meant. It was about a man finally understanding what Margaret had known all along. Success isn't measured in ratings or fame. It's measured in showing up when it matters, in choosing family over fame, in recognizing that the people who love you enough to set you free are the ones worth coming back for. Johnny Carson spent years becoming the most successful man on television, but it took 15 seconds of silence and a yellow piece of paper to teach him what success actually meant. Margaret had loved him enough to let him go. Catherine had watched him without bitterness. And Johnny, finally, loved them enough to show up. If Johnny's story reminded you that it's never too late to show up for the people who matter, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about the moments that changed everything. Because sometimes the most important decisions happen in 15 seconds of silence, and we're here to tell you about every one of them.